RV Trip Wizard has always pointed out to you the safest route on the map to avoid low clearances while you prepare your trip. Now, RV Trip Wizard's new RV Safe routing will do the work for you and much, much more. Let's look at those new features. You can see here we've opened up RV Trip Wizard, and so far it looks the same. We'll go ahead and click on New Trip, and we'll give our trip a name. We'll just call it Demo. And we'll choose a date and click Create. We'll choose Use My Location. Now, when you start a new trip, you'll see this new red trip settings menu. Note that the very first time you log in after the update has been released, before you can even open a trip or click on a new trip, you'll be prompted to update your default settings with height, weight, length, and whether or not you'll be carrying propane. You'll also update the fuel type. That initial prompting is to facilitate the new trip settings menu you see here, to ensure it's populated with the correct settings. I've already done that for us. The default settings will always be in the green or turquoise menu, while the trip settings will be in the red menu. Now let's examine this in some detail. You'll see here the trip name that we've chosen, as well as a place to add some trip notes. You'll be able to access this later if you don't have anything to note just yet. The trip status is a new feature. Here you can choose between active, tentative trip, or archive. We'll talk about that more a bit later. We'll choose active for now. Next, we'll move to the RV Info tab. Here's where many of the default settings you chose earlier will be shown. Here again you have height, which has been a feature and you should already be familiar with. Length is a new feature. Weight is a new feature. Even though we've had fuel type before, there's a few more choices, so fuel type will need to be populated. And of course your fuel capacity, fuel reserve. Note that motorhome owners should always keep about a quarter tank in reserve to allow that generator to keep running. And of course your fuel economy or your miles per gallon. Another new feature here is the carrying propane or not. This will help RV Trip Wizard determine whether any propane restricted tunnels need to be routed around, for example. And we'll talk about that more later. You all electric coaches or those without propane can obviously pick no. Let's take a look at the Routing and Driving tab. Here, it's important to change, if you haven't already, to the RV-friendly routing. Like before, we still have the avoid tolls, avoid highways, avoid ferries. New are avoid all tunnels and avoid unpaved roads. We'll bring up a screenshot here and you can see that we've chosen a campground that can't be accessed without going over some unpaved roads. So TripWizard warns us about that. Another example would be if you told TripWizard you didn't want to drive on highways, but your destination absolutely required it. You would be routed, but with the same kind of warning. You'll always get a warning if TripWizard has to break one of those routing rules in order to get you to your location. Now back to our settings. You'll see the driving radius is familiar. However, we've added some color coding. And of course, the average speed is the same here. We'll look at the Expenses tab, and all we've done here is add or move the average cost per gallon to this more sensible location with all our other expenses. So at this point, we can click Save those trip settings. Now, if I reopen this trip later, I won't get prompted again. However, I could go and change them purposefully by clicking on the wrench icon and going to trip settings. Now, let's look at some of the new features. I'm going to bring up a trip here. This little section of road is in Durham, North Carolina. You can see that RV Trip Wizard has taken a very roundabout path to get to this second location, which is seemingly just a few blocks away. If you know this area, then you know that this is where the infamous can opener bridge is located. With a clearance of only 11 foot 8 inches, it has peeled the top off many a rental truck and scraped the air conditioners off the tops of dozens of RVs. RV Trip Wizard will protect you from that. In the past, RV Trip Wizard would show you several clearance warnings and allow you to route around them. Now, RV Trip Wizard does the work for you and creates an RV safe route to your destination. Now here's something new. I've created the same trip, but with standard routing. And you can see the more direct route it took us from point A to point B. Let's look at another example. If you live in the Northeast, then you know that parkways and RVs don't get along. Now, RV Trip Wizard will plan your route safely and keep you off of those tricky parkways. If you look at this example, you can see that our route from point A to point B avoids these parkways altogether. This is because we've chosen RV-friendly routing for this trip. Let's change it to standard routing and see how it changes. We'll go to our wrench icon and we'll choose Trip Settings. Then we'll go to the Routing and Driving tab. Here we'll change from RV-friendly routing to standard routing. We'll save those settings, and you can see how the map has redrawn the route more appropriate for automobiles, allowing us to get on those parkways. Bear in mind that's efficient for automobiles, not RVs. We'll want to keep it on the RV-friendly setting to avoid those parkways that our RVs do not belong on. Let's look at one last example. Here you can see that we have a route from point A to point B, yet the route again seems less than efficient. This is because the route includes a tunnel where propane is strictly prohibited. Note that many tunnels can be traversed with propane if it's simply turned off. So RV Trip Wizard will still route you through those. Just remember to turn the propane all the way off when you break camp, if tunnels are in your route. But there are some tunnels where propane is not allowed at all. This is one of them. Let's look at this same route on standard routing. Again, this is just to show you how RV Trip Wizard is keeping you RV safe. We wouldn't want to set it for standard routing for our normal trip planning. I'll open up a trip I have saved to show you this, and then we'll go into the settings and see how it was accomplished. You can see without the RV-friendly routing, we would have been directed to a tunnel where propane is not allowed. Again, that setting is controlled with each trip on a per-trip basis by standard routing or RV-friendly routing. Standard routing means the map will route you just like it would any other normal car, SUV, or pickup truck without taking into consideration the RV dimensions you have selected for your RV. It will just ignore those dimension settings. This per-trip customization means that you can plan trips for a variety of needs or circumstances without affecting your all-important default settings. These are just a few examples of how the per-trip customization can work. The same can apply if you have multiple RVs or commonly rent different RVs. You can specify the settings you need just for that trip. Let's look at one more of the features we talked about earlier, which was the trip status. Archive you should already be familiar with, as it is already integrated into RV Trip Wizard. This is a great place to save old trips you don't wish to delete because they include a lot of great notes and destination information that you may want to reference again. The new status here is called tentative. Very often when trip planning, we create several options or versions of trips to handle a variety of what-if scenarios, and tentative is a great place to keep those. Not only do these three statuses help keep you organized, they make it much more efficient to access the active trips when you need them, not only in RV Trip Wizard, but for the new RV Life 2.0 mobile app as well, which gives you free access to the trips you've saved when you sign into the app with your RV Trip Wizard credentials. There are also paid subscription options in the app that allow you to access all of those trips while offline as well, when no internet access is available. There you have it. The latest update to RV Trip Wizard offers you RV safe routing. We hope you'll enjoy these highly requested new features that our dedicated team has produced. Look for more of our videos on Facebook and YouTube. Just search for RV Trip Wizard.